So about Spirit Bird, we are a non-profit organization with the purpose of improving health of society in a sustainable way. This is our big picture. And why do we want this, or why is it necessary to have Spirit Bird? It's because many people are feeling anxious, restless, and disconnected, even more in uncertain times like these. And they often don't know how to get out of it or how to help themselves. And with Spirit Bird, we help those people to make their first step or continue on their path to peace of mind. We'd like to show the people suitable techniques, tools, and activities to start transforming, to feel more confident, grounded, connected, and satisfied. And how are we going to achieve this? First step is we would like to build a community, which is why we are all here now in the speaker sessions. We would like to show the diversity of tools, techniques, and activities existing. And we know that not everything is for everyone, but there is anything for everybody. So last week we had a speaker session with KD, for example. This week we have Stephen and then Christina for yoga. But we also want to show, let's say, qigong, taiji, sound healing, astrology, numerology, and much more to discover. And it's very interesting to make people talk about their experience or their path and where it all started and where was the beginning and what was their change during this path. So that is the first thing, is the community. And the second, which we would like to do together with the community, is to create a platform or an ecosystem that will bring like-minded people together for activities. Teachers, practicing people, and beginners shall be connected on Spirit Bird to practice together, share knowledge, and help each other. So the main goal of the platform is to remove unnecessary obstacles standing in between you and your path to peace of mind. I mean, the path is beautiful. The spiritual path, or to take ourselves time for ourselves, is a beautiful task, but it's also very intense. So we would like to reduce everything or remove everything that is unnecessary on this path. And yes, because we want you to be able to focus on what is really important, and that is your process and your inner growth. So finally, Spirit Bird shall lead to a more considerate and conscious treatment of ourselves, our fellow human beings, and nature. That's it. If you have questions to our project, feel free to ask them after the session. We will stay here when the talk to Stephen is over to answer any of your questions about our projects. And we'd love to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mats. That's good for me to hear also.
Yeah.
I joined just on the trust that I know Nina quite well, but it sounds like a beautiful project. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your introduction, Mats. And also it's really nice to see all of you, because it already feels like community. And I think we have been growing together as a community even more so over the last couple of months in a different way, like more online wise, right? So, but I think, yeah, where to start? I mean, as Mats already said, if you have questions, you write it down. It's a different, I think, Stephen, many of you know you through teaching, like teaching either at Air Yoga or online nowadays, or also, and I think in future in your studio, where you can maybe talk a little more in a little moment that we see in the background. But I think what I would love to ask you first is also as your student and as a part of the community, like when did you or how did you get in touch with spirituality first in your life? Like what happened that you...
Yeah, what happened? I tried to not make it too long a story, but it's a good story. I was, some of you have heard maybe this once at least. So if you heard it before, you get it again. I was living in Vancouver and was having this graphic design business, photography, this great passion of mine. And I was in Morocco with a very, very close friend. We were doing a photo shoot. And, when you have beloved friends and then you travel with them, you find out a little bit more about your friends and your connections. And we struggled very, very deeply on this project we were doing in Morocco. And we got to a very bad point where we could barely stand each other. And that was quite sad. And one day he said to me, let's just go down to the beach. We were on the coast, and let's just make a little bit of yoga. And I thought, what? Well, why? What's that going to do? And I really didn't know anything, to be honest. And we went down and made a little bit of yoga, and we talked a little bit, and we came back to Canada. And he gave me a little pass for a yoga studio at Christmas time. And that was, I think, 1999. And I went to this class, and it just moved me physically, like it does for many people. I was a bit touched by this feeling in my body after the practice. I've always been sportive and active, and somehow it was a very, very interesting experience. I remember riding home and thinking, well, I have to do that again. And I did that a few times over the next few months, and I kind of just fell down a slippery slope into a yoga asana practice. And that became a big part of my life. And I grew up in a very religious background, fundamental Christian background. And I struggled, as I've told some of you, with some of the hypocrisy and the way that the religion and the spirituality didn't seem to fit for me, even as a young man, as a teenager. And so I ran a little bit away from all of that kind of stuff and didn't want to look back. It was a painful time in my life, and I had to leave a little bit my family to do that in some ways, energetically. So when I came to the asana, that was comfortable for me. But when I started to see a little bit the bigger picture of yoga, I was introduced somehow just to the Yoga Sutras and a few things like this. And I immediately had a very hard reaction in my heart, which was like, this is a bit of a scary place for me, where we start to talk about spirituality. But there was a hunger that is somewhere inside me that I could feel. And so I let myself go a little bit into that and made a bit of surrender, which was tough for me. I was really walking with one foot, way back behind, protecting myself. And I couldn't really surrender deeply into it, to be honest. And then I was nevertheless very fascinated by the asana practice. And I was driving, I don't know if any of you have ever been to the West Coast, but there's a drive between Vancouver and Whistler. It's one of the most beautiful roads I've ever driven in this world. And I was driving up to Whistler to see a friend, and was playing Krishna Das on my in my truck. And while it was playing, I realized, this something touches me really deep in the heart. And it was a very, very, in English we say quickening moment. It was an extremely sharp moment in my life where I thought, I have to somehow surrender to this and see what's behind all of this. It's really, I can feel the call. That sounds cliche, but that's really what it felt like. And I landed at my friend's place, it's a little studio up in Whistler. And when I walked in, she was looking at a website. This is 2001. She was looking at a website of a little yoga training in Thailand. I literally had this thought of surrendering into this work, walked into the studio, and there was this website. And I looked at it and I thought, that's where I have to go. Sounds a bit corny, but it was really true. And in very short order, I closed my life down in Vancouver with the idea that I would take a year off of my design and photographic work. I would just close the whole thing. It was a very small boutique, so I had to let go of 2 people. And anyway, that's lots of details. But the point is, I made a big jump, which when I look back at it now, I think I don't know if I'd have the courage to do that You get older and you start to hang on a little bit. But I had a lot of guts and courage at that moment. And I just said, I'm going. I'm just going to take a year and see where this takes me. And I went to Asia, and there I met this pranayama teacher quite by chance. But it was, one thing was leading me along the way to the other. And when I met him, he presented this practice in a way that I could see the difference between religion and spirituality. And I could see how there's a path for our own understanding of what the divine is, or what God is, or what peace is, or what a deep feeling of ease is, or what myself is. All of these things became evident. He wasn't trying to pull me into his gang or convince me to be part of some clique or some group or some club. He just said, this is a practice and I'm happy to teach it to you, and see what happens. Just see what happens. Just trust this process. And so that was the beginning of the journey for me, was the breath work. And here again, I had some years of asana under my belt, and it was the breath work really that opened it all up for me. And it created an appetite for me to understand more. Who am I? What's, how does my mind work? What's going on? What's unconscious in me that I want to bring into a quality of consciousness? None of those things I was really asking, but that's what was happening in a way. And that was this very unbelievable period of time between around 2003 and 2010, where I spent a lot of time with Tawari, this teacher, and the breath work and the pranayama was somehow my gateway. That was my door into all of this. And it opened up this trust and this thirst and this fascination with those qualities that we would call the path of spirituality, I guess. That's how it started.
Thank you. Can you hear me or not at all?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, that's just the perks of technique. But hey, thank you so much for sharing. I think part of that journey you shared with community as well, and what you touched down on was already, but maybe still to go in it a bit deeper, like you said, like surrendering a lot, right? Like to find the ease, but still, in what way would you define, like, what is spirituality for you now, and maybe how did it change over the years? Like, you started in a maybe more asana based way, but then over time, like, did that change at all, or would you say it's still the same in its essence?
No, I think it's still the same for me. It's really essentially what I must say, what Tawari taught me at the beginning was, he sort of said, we have to operate in this life, in our family and in our work, in our environment, in our community. How well are you going to operate? And how well will you manage that? And what will you offer this world? And to do that requires a quality of love, and for there to be really an honest quality of love, not a mental idea like I will love or I will be compassionate, but that it is me. It has to be somehow found within. So it's the same for me. It's exactly the same feeling, is how can I somehow integrate myself into family and environment and community. And at the beginning, I thought, oh, well, here's the solution. I'm finding it and I'm well on my way. And the ego came quite quick that, wow, I'm quite good at this. And I'm discovering this deep spiritual quality within myself. And then I watched myself fail spectacularly. I mean, just unbelievable collapse to the ground again, and watched myself eat, in English we say eat humble pie, which means, realize that you're also a fallible broken human being. And so that was a big step to see that. And then it brought together the reality of living as a complex being and this quest to somehow slowly, compassionately find the courage to let go of fear and let go of stories and let go of patterns, so that slowly I could be more useful to myself and to my family and to the community like that. Yeah. And along the way, I guess that you touch in yourself some spaces of ease or less suffering or love or peace, or sometimes euphoria, sometimes horror, but you feel all these things deeply. That's, for me, the path is to discover myself and then to make myself more useful and to try and slowly reduce the things which make me not useful to myself or to community, right? And to also to heal somehow the karma that I inherit as a man, as a person, the story of my father. You know, this is all a big healing process, which is part of a pattern that we offer. So does that make sense somehow, that I clear that up a little bit myself, and then I'm more useful backwards towards my heritage, to my family, and forwards towards the community in front of me or my family now. Mm-hmm. That's what it is for me. Also, it's not, I just would finish with one thing on that. No. It's not, Tuari always said to me, it's the spiritual awakening is not fireworks. Same Richard Freeman, who taught me really fundamentally the asana. It's not fireworks, and it's not the journey to the superhero. And it's not that I'm somehow through this process going to become greater. It's really, that's why the surrender is there. It's really the process of becoming natural and being myself and being at ease. And then through that comes my own unique way.
So also what you said, like you kind of started to feel like, how do you serve also maybe in your best way, or how to serve the community or the people around you, right? And you do that, and you did that before for many years now as a teacher of yoga, well, pranayama, everything related like that. In which way do you see, like, has yoga become more important to people, or has it always been like that in your communities, or in which way do you feel with the whole shifts that happen or that arise now as well, with all the, you know, more digital and more virus and whatever is going on, in which way did it change?
There's a lot of questions, Nina.
Yeah, so much. Like, I have so many questions, you know, maybe we, yeah.
Well, first, one thing, I'm just going to speak off the top of my head or the front of my heart, whatever. The first thing is, let's go back one question before. The other thing that happens when you do the practice is that whatever your thing is in this world, you have more energy for it. So I feel like if anything grew in the past 20 years, it's the capacity within me to do this work as a teacher. And the strength and this, like a reservoir or well of energy. Where does that come from? Not from me. It's so you're surrendering and softening and opening and allowing that kind of energy to then move through you. That gets better and better. If you're careful, if you can get your ego out of the way and you're not doing it for your own fame or your own glorification, there's an unbelievable reservoir of energy, not just to be a teacher, but to be a banker or photographer or whatever it is, whatever your role in the society is. If you can, the spiritual practice will allow that energy to flow for sure in a clearer, more useful way. So I just wanted to say that, about this. And then you said, how has it changed over the years? It just got a bit wider than the net. the net got a little bit wider, I think. So there's a beautiful saying, which is that the vidya, which is the knowledge, this spiritual knowledge, is its own force. It has its own intelligence. You can hear me? Yeah. And so if you think that the vidya, or this knowing, has its own capacity, its own force, then it naturally responds to humanity or to the world as is needed. You know, I always go back, I think the Dalai Lama said when he was asked, are you not so angry at to try and keep myself in focus here, are you not so angry at the Chinese for the way they destroyed your culture and took over the country? And he said, well, on one level, relatively speaking, yes, it's painful. It's very, very painful.
Somehow it muted you again. I don't know. Can you check?
There I am again. Sorry.
Okay. Wait.
Why does it do that? I wonder. What did you miss? Did you hear about the Dalai Lama?
Yes.
Just to summarize, yeah. So he was asked, are you not angry at the Chinese? Yes, that's painful, relatively speaking, that's painful. However, he said, we've been holding for 1,000 years this wisdom tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, and we kept it to ourselves, and we really had the boundaries up, and nobody else was allowed to know it. But when we got pushed out of our own country, and we ended up in Italy and Argentina, and Switzerland, and America, all of a sudden this wisdom was being spread around the world. And that's what the world needed. So the teachings have their own intelligence, and they respond somehow to what's needed on the planet, in the world. And so the fact that we see yoga growing, or meditation growing, or wisdom practices, if you like, growing, like you said, Mats, it's not just yoga, any wisdom practice, any practice which somehow is opening up and helping people to understand themselves, and all of those things move to the forefront now for a reason. It's not an accident. And I find it quite beautiful to see that. And people are inspired then to teach or to share or to learn this and to make it a part of their own life. And that's how it spreads, you know. But there's an intelligence to the vidya, which is this sort of knowledge. Nature works like that. We can rest into that, and then we can also take the responsibility to see there's a reason that I'm here right now. There's a reason that this touches me, and I can step into that with confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense somehow? I give one more example. We're here tonight, even just the 15 of us or whoever's here. I walked around Mount Kailash about 12 or 13 years ago. And when I arrived in Kathmandu for this crazy journey, the first thing that our guide said to us was, you're obviously here for a reason. Otherwise, you would be drinking on a beach in Thailand with your time off. But you used your time off to come here and take this crazy journey where you will experience the worst toilets of your life, and you will feel altitude sickness like never before. It's not going to be fun. And he said, so something has brought you to this point. So therefore, and this really touched me, he's like, so you can just stop the stress of trying to decide whether you're in the right place or not. Something brought you here. So you're clearly in the right place. And that in a way gave me a little bit of like, I don't have to stop analyzing whether I'm doing the right thing or not. I can feel that life is moving me down this path effortlessly, right? Not effortlessly, but there's a current behind me. I'm talking a lot, I think.
Thank you. It's so nice. Also, in many of us take your classes, and then sometimes it's the practice, right? But then also we don't get to talk to you that
that's true.
way. So it's kind of a nice way to share as well and to hear from you. Yeah, at that point, does anyone have a question or anything burning?
Burning.
Burning on the, or just on the heart to share? Okay. Otherwise,
no, that's the right way to say it.
Otherwise, you can write it. But because there are many of us are teachers here, so would you have anything to share with teachers that do not have that kind or amount of experience as well, like something that you would just like to share with us?
Yes, for sure.
We share our essence with the community as well, or when we feel that calling to share.
Yeah, I think that it's so valuable to simply do the work honestly where you're at right now as a practitioner and as a teacher. So if I look back at how I taught in the first year that I taught, I would, in some ways, I would probably smile at myself and see the bravado and this, my ego, and I was trying so hard. But also I remember in those times, it was just simply trying to offer what I understood up to that point. And in that way, we're always ready to teach. And it sounds really simple, but it's true. And it can be very, very effective for young teachers to teach, because somehow there's a connection in a way that they reach students that's different than someone who's been doing it for 20 years. So, or 10 years or 5 years, whatever it is. So I think you just do it because you care enough to share with people. And then you just ask the question, what do I have honestly to offer at this stage? At the beginning, I could only offer the physical practice at the beginning, because really that's what I felt like I'm comfortable with, that teaching Trikonasana. I'm not comfortable with sharing anything deeper than that at the beginning. I couldn't. I had to first go and experience that as a student. But it was useful to teach Trikonasana in those days, because it helped me to grow and it helped people to learn how to do Trikonasana. And as I found deeper layers through the koshas of myself, then there was a little bit, some space to teach at another level. And then I had to release this. All the fear I had in my throat. And so, that's the practice and the teaching just go hand in hand. You're just forever a student and you're growing. And as you grow as a student, then there's something more to share. And as you share something, the questions become more interesting, and then there's something to learn, and it just evolves like that, I think. What was the biggest challenge on your path, or where did you struggle the most? Well, that's a bit personal, but the biggest challenge for me, I think, was to confront my own falling and failings and my own weaknesses, and to, one thing for sure, when you do this work, there's no going back. So you often get a little bit of a joy, I think, at the beginning. Quite often. It's quite beautiful and pleasurable, and you see growth. And then you either have a fall or a plateau, And that can be challenging. That can be really difficult because it brings a lot of questions like doubt and insecurity, or feeling like you fall down in front of your peers and your colleagues or your community. And that's a tough part for some people that was a tough part for me because when, when you do the work, then what happens is the unconscious stuff inside of you starts to become conscious. And some of that is not so pleasant to look at. And that is hard. That's hard stuff to see. And sometimes it's manifesting as action, and you're watching yourself make action which you know is harmful or painful. And that's tough because when you're unconscious, you can kind of just roll along with it. Tell yourself a story, blame others, or don't look, And as you go into this work, there's no more hands in front of the eyes. And so that's why the Sangha or the community is important. Your teaching posse is important. And that's why these qualities of metta and loving kindness and Maitri, self-care, these things become essential to get through that, right? So if that was the question, that's from Mats, yeah. That was for sure the biggest challenge for me. And I never struggled with the plateau of boredom. I've always been turned on by this work, and I've always remained a hungry student, and something about it has always fascinated me deeply. So I never hit the boredom phase, but some people do hit that. They plateau, and I'm also naturally lazy, so I don't mind if it's the same for a while. It's really, like my default mechanism is actually take it easy, And no, really, I'm being honest with you. I have to kick my own ass to keep it going, So maybe also that there was a challenging time, Mats, where I wasn't kicking my own ass, and I had left Tuwari a little bit, and nobody was kicking my ass, and nobody was reminding me what got me to that point. And this is one of the things that you see in the Yoga Sutras. One of the obstacles is that we fail to maintain the level that we achieve because in English, we say we rest on our laurels. We just sort of, oh, well, I guess I'm pretty good at this. And it just goes backwards quickly. So you need somehow also the people to call you on it, and you need the motivation. You need someone to, if you want to use that expression, to kick your ass. And I don't mean kick your ass like make a harder asana practice. I mean stay on the practice, stay true to what you're doing, keep working on yourself. And
maybe just a little question. You said boredom. Do you mean like stagnation as well with that? Or is it more like, because I find sometimes also talking to friends or teacher friends or student friends that stagnation is kind of the phase sometimes as well, like in our own practices mainly, but then sometimes as well also during maybe COVID when you're only teaching in front of a laptop. So stagnation is a part of recognizing maybe as well that you're stagnating.
Yeah, but I agree it happens. I must say that the vow to do this work for the sake of others is critical. It must be so deep within you, and that has to be cultivated. It's a practice to remember that I'm doing this for others. Of course, this is my career. I do it to take care of myself. I earn my living from this. I take care of my family from this. But ultimately, the deepest purpose of it, it's like what you said at the beginning, Mats, it's to serve others. And if that is the deep default for you, it cannot be boring, because you're just in service, you know? And so if you're sitting behind the computer, you're not worried about yourself right now so much that I'm sitting behind a computer. You're aware that there's some other people out there that might profit or benefit from this. And so that motivates you. It wakes you up. It makes you inspired. The opposite, you know? It sounds simple, but I really mean it from my heart. I find someone asked me, how many times have you taught Trikonasana in your life? Like 20,000? Don't you get bored of that? But if I was just interested in Trikonasana, then yeah, it would be boring after a while. But if you're interested in how Trikonasana affects somebody, what that could do for them, to use that example, it's never boring. It's not. It's endlessly fascinating because it's a constant gift that's being given. And you just have to somehow turn that mechanism around a little bit so that it becomes less about you and more as a service. And then it really does maintain its freshness, if you will. It stays fresh. And you realize if I want to take care of people, then I had better continue to take care of myself. And so it's like a circle like that. It just feels like a beautiful circle of energy. Does that make sense somehow? And yeah. That's how I feel about that topic. And when you're down or you're plateauing and you're a little bit bored, then you just get busy and do it for others. And it's incredible the energy that comes out of that intention.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, no, it's also a bit of what we have been touching down with Krishna Das last week. Also, this being in service, but mainly also, about the ego, like being very honest about that ego is present as well. Like you want to be in service. Yes, you want to be in service, but then still you want to be in service, right? So, But
it feels nice to, on the relative level, to feel useful, and it feels nice that people would smile or that they would say thank you. It feels nice to feel like I feel, wow, I can do this as a job. It feels nice. Those are all egoistic statements, but that's okay. That's really okay. And you don't become robotic. I mean, it feels good for sure. But the fundamental or deep purpose behind it is service. It has to be somehow. The rest really starts to take care of itself.
Yeah. That's also something that maybe leads us into you're in your studio now in Bern. So I think the Bern crew from here, from this session, will be super happy that there is this nice space at the Postgasse, I think, in Bern, you mentioned. And are you going to offer any classes maybe in that space as well for people who are interested to study with you?
No idea. This room is a classic example of what I was talking about. I've dreamed for years to find this space, and it just, I was in Zurich for a long time. It never came, and it just wasn't the right time. And somehow, when Briggy and I decided to live here in Bern, I must say part of it is her, for sure. I mean, somehow the Shiva Shakti thing, when it solidifies, is quite powerful. So I owe it a lot to her. But when that got clear, and I got clear, the space showed up. And what do I do with it? I walked into the space, I looked at Briggy, and I was like, when you're talking silently through your eyes and your heart, and I'm just looking at her thinking that this is it, this is the space. And sure enough, it was. And I never started, I must say, luckily, I didn't start the yoga path, to go all the way back to the beginning of the question, with some idea of how this would all turn out. No clue. I just knew, I felt it in my heart, and I felt that's what I have to do. The details will start to sort themselves out, but I have to do this. I'm going back 20 years now. When we found the space here, I was like, well, I don't know. Will I start painting again? Will I just use this for doing spirit bird interviews? Or will I, will Roberto show up on Thursday mornings? Right? Will I do privates here? Well, I don't know. I still don't know. I'm just building the space. I spent a fortune of my long old savings and built the dream, what I wanted, and let's see what happens. And so far, it's been beautiful just to see the energy that comes from doing that. So that's a very round way of answering your question, Nina.
No, it's good. It's good.
But it's true, and it's true. I probably will offer some classes here. I can't imagine why not, right, Marco? Once this whole COVID thing is over, we can have morning jams here. Of course, it will be beautiful to share the space. It also, in the meantime, is a place I can paint again. I can go all the way back to my photographic and artistic work, and somehow make that a part of my spiritual life. And I'm excited. It's a little place that can hold my dreams, and so it came at a nice time. And let's see how it grows. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hi,
Yeah.
Celine. Hello. Good to see you, Julia. Yeah.
One more question of Mats right now. What is your explanation for not seeing many men in yoga classes?
Yeah, I have some opinions on that. I do see more and more men in yoga classes. Switzerland is, if we just speak frankly, Switzerland is a little bit behind what I would have experienced, let's say, in Vancouver or New York or something like that, or London. I find it very, very common in Vancouver when I go home that I see a wild cross-section of men in yoga class. It's still dominated by women, for sure, but I see more and more men doing this work here. I mean, even just, I'm looking at the screen right now and it's 50-50. So I know what you mean, Mats, but at the same time, just watch. It will continue to change. I think there's some logistical reasons for that. There's a little bit of cultural reasons for that when the dawn of yoga came in the 70s and 80s, the time of day that it was being taught and where it was being taught was less accessible for men who maybe classically at that time were in 9-to-5 jobs, and perhaps the women weren't. That's one thing that was happening. It's ironic because if you go back 100 years, it's only men. Women weren't even allowed. So, I mean, that's a fascinating story to see how that turned upside down. And I think it just became a trend for a while, and that it was female dominated. And so for many men, speaking as a man, I think many men were maybe intimidated to come into that space. And there was the misconception that the whole practice is about stretching, becoming flexible. And so that was intimidating for some men. But that's not what it is. And as the practice becomes more round and full, and we see what it really is, then we see more men arriving in the practice. We need more men in the practice for sure. I agree with you. It needs a healing of the masculine in our society by a long shot. Not the men, but the masculine. Capitalism and our obsession with unbelievable, like nonstop growth. All of these kinds of things, these masculine forms, need to be healed and brought into balance. So it isn't just that men need to show up. It's also that we have to stop teaching the practice in a way where it's dominated by performance. Right? I mean, we're carried away by this idea of performance and better and more, and that misses a whole other side of nature and life. And so it's a shame even that in the practice, whether it's full of women or 50-50, that the practice is being taught in a way which emphasizes that only. I kind of wandered into a different field now, but I feel strongly about that. And one of the things that I have made a personal commitment, even I love asana, I love to go deep. I mean, I love it, but I really, really try very hard to cultivate an environment where it's not a competition, and it is not about more. The only more is more feeling or more experience or depth. That's all.
Yeah. I still remember, I mean, also observing many people or students in your class and also being your student. I remember like exactly what you said, like the doing too much, the over effort instead of the bit of surrender. And I think that you also made me help like to feel that a bit more, like that I'm too much in one part of my practice.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, it's super important in the community and in the life that we have today. There are shifts, yes, but still to be reminded of that as well, that it is important to surrender and to soften in order to feel.
Yeah, I mean, look, the practice gets very widespread now. We've been saying that for 20 years, but still, it's very widespread. And it's our responsibility somehow as the people who are sharing this practice to teach it in its complete form, which is, it has some quality of service and worship and softness and letting go and acceptance. It has paradoxically a evolutionary part to it. It's a practice of tapas, like fire, to change, to transform. So if you feel that, Richard Freeman used to say, if you can feel that paradox, if you feel confused, like I feel like I'm really on fire right now, and yet I'm supposed to be letting go, congratulations, you're in it, And so I try to feel that in my practice and in my teaching, that it should feel like a funny paradox, always. Not sitting on one side of that polarity. That's an amazing place to play in. That's also why our world is so crazy right now, with everybody trying to line themselves up on one side. It's what makes it so dysfunctional in some ways these days. These strong polarities, instead of the acceptance of this paradox. Even the garden is a good example. It's beautiful and it's total chaos and death. Both things, right? Your plants, right? Anybody have any good advice on a jade plant which is about to die in my house? I cannot. I can't save it. Does anybody want a dead jade plant? I'll send it to you. No, but just to go back, because this is a very, very beautiful and important point, which Richard Freeman said. If you feel that paradox of confusion between the surrender, the letting go, and the effort and the tapas, the fire to change, you're in it. That's where it's happening. One last question. What could anyone, I always think when you guys ask me, you speak for an hour, and I think, an hour? How am I going to do an hour? And then I can't shut up, right? Then I just get me, I'm like that bunny that you wind up the back and then it doesn't stop. Anyway, what could anyone on the beginning of their path do now without equipment or further knowledge as a first step towards inner peace? That's really simple. I use my good friend and fellow teacher, Evelyn Hunger, as the example. Before she was really deep into this work at all, she's an emergency doctor in Samadhan in the Engadine. And she was going to a Ayurvedic doctor and a meditator. And that woman said, you have so much vata in your system. It's just, everything's moving too fast. And Evelyn was sort of saying, I just need to find a bit more peace. And she said, just wake up 20 minutes earlier than you usually do, and find a comfortable seated position and sit there. And Evelyn said, and sit there and do what? And she said, nothing. Just sit there. Just be quiet and sit there. Do that every day for 20 minutes. See what happens. And, you know, it's a bit of a funny story, but there's a real truth in it, which is just, I'm answering this question, Mats, just if you could do one thing, it would be just sit still and listen. And don't expect a still mind. It's never going to happen. And don't expect that peace is going to suddenly emerge and fly with white golden feathers. Just sit still and be with yourself. Do it for a year. Do it at 3 times a week or 5 times a week or whatever you could afford, and see what happens in that process. 15 minutes even, like that. Because we all have within us this inner wisdom or this inner compass, and it simply will never present itself as long as you're so busy. So there's a beautiful film called The One Giant Leap. I don't know if anyone's seen that. One Giant Leap. I write it in the comment box. And there's you have to see it at some point. It's really beautiful. It's a musical journey, spiritual musical journey. But they're interviewing different people through the film, and this one man is sitting there, and he said, you know, I kept asking myself, who is this person inside me that beats my heart and moves the blood through me and knows my history? Who is that person? And I realized one day, he will never speak until I stop speaking. And so this inner place within you will never reveal itself until you get quiet. That's why for me, I couldn't get quiet, but the breath work, the pranayama, that was my gateway. When I learned finally how to breathe and I could find some space between my breaths, there was some space to get quiet, and I could feel like I can sit still for a moment. And that changed everything, including the asana, you know. But I must say, without sounding too dramatic, that just that stillness changed everything. So that's the practice, I think, Mats, you know. No fancy stuff. You can do a bunch of fancy stuff on top of that, but if you use that as a foundational practice, just sit still. Watch what happens over time.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And for reminding.
It's great to see all of you. It was very sweet to share like that. Good idea.
We're really thankful also, and I think it's good for all of our hearts to reconnect in that space and with all of you and what you have mentioned, and also with all of the community. Thanks so much for being part. And just thanks for your time.
Yeah, I think I would summarize just by saying that the without the active quality of love, it's very difficult to do this work. To cultivate some sort of inner compassion and forgiveness for ourselves, and then to turn that outwards. That's needed. And then is needed somehow this quality of service. And then there is this joy that we find in the paradox of life, and seeing the beautiful way that these polarities dance into this paradox between effort and surrender and transformation and acceptance, all of those places. So then find some good practices. Find a teacher or a couple of teachers or a few practices that work for you. Work on them for some years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I think Mats just shared the community group chat that we have. Like, if you're interested, you can be part of that group chat. We just exchange and create community in that way. Also, if you want to receive our newsletter, we put the link, and we're currently running our crowdfunding campaign also, just to raise some funds for our vision eventually to set into life. So thanks so much for your support in any way, and for being present mainly.
Awesome.
Wish you a very happy evening. And
Oh, Sina, you there? Cool, you're there. I hope that things are going well. Yeah, it's nice to see these people. Thanks for the friendship, everybody. That's really, I mean that from my heart. That's the essence. That's the juice, right?
Feel free to unmute and to wave, right? And to
Good.
Say whatever you have to say.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thanks, Mats.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adelina.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you to Mads and Nina. You're amazing. The space that you are creating.
Thank you.
I'm very curious what's going to happen with the spirit bird. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Everybody have a good night. Yeah.
Thanks so
Good
much
night.
for your time.
Mustafa.
What do I do here, Mats? Do I just close out?
Yes, you can just close out.
Thanks very much. You guys are doing a great thing. Really, really cool.
Thank you, Stephen.
We stay in touch, eh?
Hope to see you soon. Yes.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.